I don't think Avowed is going to be one of the worst games in the world, but I do think it may be one of the worst marketed games that I've seen in a long time. At least until now. Things are getting a little bit better for it. This will probably be the most positive I've spoken about Avowed for a long, long time. But the marketing for the game, like the whole marketing cycle, it's just so bad. I'd say it's worse than the marketing for the Veilguard, because at least they sort of tried to hide some of the worst stuff. Like, the Veilguard had that pathetic companion trailer, but they tried to recover and sort of crawl their way back from there. Unlike Avowed, which has just been pretty much pathetic until now, sort of 3 months from release. Like, the big problems with it are, originally there was some decent trailers. Like, people were kind of pumped for Avowed when it was first announced. People were very excited for it. Come on, when is it coming out? We want to hear more. But then over time, they just lost people's interest. And it wasn't just the trailers, which were just weaker. Like, it just seemed like, firstly, like, the graphical quality obviously came down. I don't personally care that much about graphics, but I think it's a first impression thing. If it just doesn't look that good, that impressive, people are going to lose excitement. It's not really going to blow up in the mainstream. There was a bit of a tonal shift as well, like this sort of dark fantasy that we saw in initial trailers. It just got a little bit too light and fluffy. Like, the NPCs, I know it's the Pillars of Eternity universe and that does its own thing. It's not like maybe other fantasy games that we've played. But come on, like, the characters just didn't look good. They didn't sound good either. Like that thing where the voices don't match the character that you actually see on the screen. That seems to be pretty common in a lot of recent games, including the Veilguard. Like, what was that the non-binary character? Like, when he, she, whatever speaks, it's like, what? Like, the voice does not match what we're seeing on the screen. And Avowed has kind of been guilty of that too. Not as bad as the Veilguard, but just kind of weak. Then even the developers. Like, I don't think I've seen developers of a game that are less excited for their product. Like, Todd Howard may be a liar, but he's a good salesman. Like, he gets you excited about the game. The people behind Avowed, like, they're just telling you what's not going to be in it. Like, they'll say, yeah, like, you're excited about Baldur's Gate 3 and features in that game, but we're not doing any of that in Avowed. It's going to be missing. Sorry. Well, that's fine, but you've got to tell us about the things that we should be looking forward to. And I just feel like over the last 12 months, whenever I read something about Avowed, it's telling you what's not going to be in it, rather than what we're actually going to get. So the marketing has just been weak across the board. But I mention all that because I'm starting to think that even though I thought that Avowed was just going to be a pretty poor game, I thought it's probably coping just to tell yourself that the marketing is shoddy, but the final product is actually going to be amazing. That's what Dragon Age fans said about the Veilguard. Like that awful companion trailer where you've got them swinging in on vines, introducing themselves like some sort of mobile phone game trailer. People were like, no, it's just the marketing team making a mistake. The final game's going to be great. Didn't turn out that well. Well, people sort of said the same about Avowed, that maybe the marketing is just bad, but the final game will be good. I'm starting to think in Avowed's case, that may be the case, that the final game may turn out to be a bit better than the marketing, where I thought for the longest time that it just looked like they were focusing so much on the combat side. That was going to be 90% of the game, and there weren't actually going to be that many story, narrative elements, quests, and so on. It was just going to be sort of pretty linear with a focus on dungeon crawling and combat, and because Obsidian have never been that good at combat, I was not really expecting great things. But now we've actually got all of these previews coming out. It's kind of weird because some of them are called final previews, and like the game's not coming out for 3 months, and I don't know if it's because the game was kind of delayed late. It was meant to come out this month, I believe, and then it was moved to February of next year. Microsoft claimed it was because they have too many games coming out. We've got Indiana Jones, there was Veilguard that came out, so a lot of RPGs around Avowed, maybe we want to give it its own clean slate. That's kind of flopped, by the way, because even if Avowed turns out to be pretty decent, better than at least I expected, it's still going to release around the same time as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I think is just totally going to outshine it no matter what. So the delay seems like it might have been a mistake. Given the Veilguard flopped so bad, and people are sort of like, well, I want to play a decent RPG this time of year leading into Christmas. Holidays, please, where is it? This might have been a decent time for Avowed, where people's standards are low, but too late for that. It's coming out early next year. But again, kind of weird that it is releasing in 3 months and we're getting final previews now. It could be that the team is actually confident in the game, which is a shock to me. I didn't think they were very confident, which is why they were not saying very good things. But again, it may just be the marketing behind the game, the people who are speaking about the game, not the best communicators, and people are just failing to sell what may be actually a solid enough game. Maybe not amazing. I don't think that they're going to 180 and go from nothing to 100 and this is the best thing ever, but it may be a solid enough game. And I've always said, even when I've criticized Avowed, that it's really just based on what they've shown or haven't shown to us. Like, they haven't shown any good stuff, so how am I going to get excited? I'm not just going to trust that it's going to be great, given that Obsidian have had some misses in recent years. So I was just basing it on what I've actually seen. But again, until now, it seems what they're showing at the moment in the final previews, given a lot of people have been playing it, it's not just the sort of corrupt mainstream sites, the IGNs and so on who have played it. It's YouTubers as well, some of which are usually pretty open. They're talking about having played it for 10 plus hours and so on. And it's not just that they're saying good things and shilling for the game, these reviewers, previewers. What we're seeing from the content looks a lot better than what we've seen from Avowed in the past. Like, you see a bit more of these kind of open areas to explore and interact with. It looks all right. It looks, I'd say, at least Outer Worlds standards, and Outer Worlds isn't really that good. I think it's kind of below par, it's mediocre. But honestly, after something like the Veilguard coming out, I think people would be all right with that. I think honestly, the Veilguard lowered the bar so much for what people kind of want in an RPG, at least for the moment. It lowered standards just so badly because the game was pathetic. I think people are simply going to be more accepting of a game that is at least okay at what it does. Like, the combat is decent enough, there's some questing, there's some choice. Maybe it doesn't blow your socks off, but it's a solid enough experience, 50, 60 hour RPG or something. And that's what it seems like Avowed is going to be. And again, I wasn't sure we'd even get that based on the marketing. I thought it was going to be a bit more dungeon crawly, and the development hell that this game has actually suffered. Remember, Obsidian said at the start it was going to be like their Skyrim, and then they changed directors, and then they sort of backtracked and all that, and said, oh, actually, no, it's going to be like the Outer Worlds. Now, some people have said, and I think it's a straw man when people say, oh no, like, it's better that it's not going to be like Skyrim. It's a great thing. I prefer more of the hub worlds than the open world. To be honest, in a lot of cases, I do too, but it was Obsidian who made the comparison, saying they were making a Skyrim, and then they sort of changed their minds, which to me just suggested sort of a lack of vision, a lack of organization for the project, and that's why I was worried. I'm not concerned that it's not going to be a Skyrim. Not every game needs to be that. I think Obsidian are better at more sort of tightly constructed worlds, story and so on. My concern there, though, was I wasn't sure they had the personnel to do this, because a lot of the legendary writers, the Chris Avalones in the world and so on, they're not at Obsidian anymore. It's mostly sort of new, inexperienced people who seem to be leading Avowed. So I had some concerns, but we'll see. Again, the previews that have come out, some of them have been pretty decent. You see some much better sort of screenshots, live footage of the combat and exploring areas, city kind of looking areas. There's not sort of extravagant big cities, I don't think, in the game, but there's some sort of settlement-y areas. You go to camp and talk to your companions and so on, and that might be alright stuff. And I mean, some of these screenshots we've seen before, but seeing it in action, seeing exploration actually going on, being able to look through nook and crannies, all of that in sort of wider areas, I think it looks okay. And I mean, if you're expecting complex CRPG that's really intricate and gets into detail and complex quests that really get you thinking, I don't think that's going to be there. I think this is, again, more Outer Worlds, maybe sort of later years BioWare games, like Mass Effect 2, 3, that sort of thing. I'd be expecting something more along those lines, where it's not a super intelligent game or anything, but it's fun enough to muck around with and have sort of that mainstream RPG experience in. It should be that, which I think is all right in the year 2025 when it's coming out. I think if Avowed had have released around the time of Baldur's Gate 3, like just after, that's when standards were really, really high, and people wanted CRPG experience. We know we can get this now, and people are going to buy and support it, so there's no excuse for the industry to say, no, CRPGs are never going to sell, you have to make action games or no one will go near them. The industry got away with that for a while, and people sort of accepted it and sort of went, yeah, okay, well, niche games are never going to get big budgets and so on, so whatever. We'll meet you halfway. Action games that are kind of RPGs. That's fine. But Baldur's Gate 3 kind of changed that thinking, where it's like, no, make CRPGs. We expect in-depth experiences that treat us like real, normal, intelligent people, not idiots like you've been doing for so long. Give that to us. And the industry as a whole got very mad about that. You had all those articles going around, oh, gamers are entitled, they're expecting too much. There's no way that we can make a game like Baldur's Gate 3, sort of exposing themselves as talentless hacks, but that did the rounds. Then we didn't really have too many mainstream RPGs come out. I mean, Dragon's Dogma 2, I think, disappointed some people. Maybe other people thought it was okay, but I don't think it sort of blew anything out of the water. It was just a decent release. But then again, Veilguard comes out, and now standards have probably gone back to rock bottom, where we just don't expect that much from the mainstream in terms of RPGs. So I think that's really going to help Avowed. There was a time where I thought people just wouldn't accept it because it would be so below what Baldur's Gate 3 is doing. But now it's like, yep, it's doing things decently enough. It's better than maybe the marketing previously suggested. First impressions do matter. I still think a lot of people I've seen online still have a pretty negative idea of Avowed based on some of those past trailers, interviews that the devs have done, which just don't really generate any enthusiasm, any sort of genuine excitement. So that's still a problem for them, but it also means people who do play it, they might have had low expectations, and they might be more likely to praise the game. There might be some solid enough word of mouth that, hey, this is, it's a single-player RPG, there's no microtransactions, I presume, so I think people will pick it up. And I also think that Avowed, a lot of these companies now, I guarantee you, they're going to be hiding any kind of propaganda within the game, any pandering that's going on. Like, I'm pretty sure Avowed has pronouns in it, for instance. I doubt that is ever going to come up in the marketing. If you see that, it's going to be from someone's footage. They've been allowed to record the game and show it off, and there you see it. Like, they're going to be trying to hide that sort of stuff these days because of just how badly the Concords have flopped, the Veilguards have flopped. We're seeing this in a lot of other industries as well, where any political modern messaging, whether it's in TV shows, movies, whatever it is, like even if it exists in the product itself, and when the TV show comes out, like you see it there, it's obviously pandering with all of that crap. They're hiding it in the marketing, and they're going to be doing that with games as well. And you have to be sort of wary, because a lot of these games that have been in development for like 4 or 5 years, they started development at the peak of all of this nonsense, when they were really pushing social justice, whatever you want to call it, and they were cramming that stuff into games, and executives were allowing it because they were convinced, oh, the world's changing, everyone's going to be living like this, thinking like this, and they're going to be loving this stuff. But now that's not the reality. It's clear that a lot of people drank the Kool-Aid, and the people pushing this stuff convinced everyone, oh, this is the majority opinion now. It's not. We've learned over the last year that it is not. People are not buying this garbage, which is why so many of, I'd say, the right products have flopped, and the good products have succeeded and they've sold. These game companies know it now, so rather than scrap all of these games that they've already invested money in that are full of this garbage, they're just going to try and hide a lot of it from the marketing. So something to be wary of. It's probably going to be the case with Avowed as well, which I just think the people making it, they love all the same stuff that the Veilguard developers do. Maybe not quite so much, like those guys are pretty far into the loony bin compared to the Avowed devs, but it's still going to be there as well. Something else to mention as well, just about all of these previews that have been doing the rounds, like there's so many of them. There's like 25, 30 different previews that have done the rounds, YouTubers, the IGNs of the world, and so on. The problem that these sites now have is, obviously they've lost all of their credibility after what went on with the Veilguard, where you get 9s, 10 out of 10s, real people, real gamers play it, see it's pathetic. Well, any trust that was left is now completely well and truly gone. So it's like, IGN can praise Avowed as much as it wants. Oh, it's great, it's one of the most anticipated games of 2025. That doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, any goodwill is totally gone. And people might have, say, individual content creators who they maybe trust for games and so on, and maybe you'll listen to them. But even if, like, every media outlet is telling you a game is good, it doesn't mean anything anymore, because these people have lied so many times. So I'm trying to trust my eyes and ears, which is why I've really focused on the footage that people have shown, and there's a lot of footage. Again, some people have played it for 8, 10 plus hours, so you can see a bit of it. I think Avowed is looking better. I wouldn't trust the words of these morons in games journalism, more so the mainstream ones, I mean, IGN and so on. These clowns, they've proven themselves totally untrustworthy, shills, they make up total crap to support political agendas that they're aligned with, so they've just got no credibility left. But in terms of the actual footage, I think it looks better. I think Avowed does look better. And maybe when it comes out, it does okay. It at least shows that maybe Obsidian can do something. Maybe they move on to Fallout or something. There's been rumors that Microsoft want to get someone else onto Fallout because Bethesda they fucked around for like the last decade, wasting their time with 76. Starfield, we're still going to have to wait another 5 years for the Elder Scrolls 6, so Fallout is just sitting dormant. Maybe Obsidian can move on to that. And I mean, people just have fond memories of New Vegas. It was completely different developers who no longer work at Obsidian, but people are nostalgic. I think they'd be pretty open to Obsidian having another crack. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't, but at least someone can have a go with Fallout. Like, Bethesda are doing nothing, so it can't really be that much worse. I don't think they can ruin it more than, say, with the launch of Fallout 76, so we'll see what happens there. But I will just say, with Avowed, like a week or 2 weeks ago, based on previous marketing, I saw Avowed as like maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10 when it released. That was my impression of it. I really did think it was going to be like a dungeon crawly combat romp, and everything else was going to be half-assed. The quests, exploration, all of that sort of stuff. I didn't think it was really going to be there. Based on the new footage, I do think it's at least going to be Outer Worlds quality, which won't excite a lot of people, but if you're happy with like a 7, 8 out of 10, at least by sort of modern standards, I think it might be alright. I probably won't get it at release, but I'd say I've got more of an open mind now than I ever have for it in the past. Like, it is looking better, but even still, it's gonna get overshadowed by Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Like, Avowed's problem is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is like the perfect antidote to all of the garbage we've seen this year. Like, all of these failures in the video game industry, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is like the direct opposite. A game with integrity, not just in terms of how it's designed, like proper single-player game, no bullshit monetization, but also the story, the characters, the world. All of it's got integrity. It's focused on being the best game possible, not even just the historical accuracy, but just as a video game. That team is focused on the right thing. So I think that game's going to have my attention. I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people. But maybe Avowed will be okay and people will pick it up maybe later and it will end up doing okay. We'll see what happens. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.